Sorry? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this panel, Investing in the Amazon's Future, Empowering Indigenous Communities as Natural Custodians. This is a side event co-organized by the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency and the Inter-American Development Bank. My name is Fazia Pusterla, and I am the IDB representative for Europe. I will be moderating this panel. During this session, we will share experiences on how proactively work to preserve a healthy Amazon. A particular focus will be given to the role of new and future generations of indigenous people in these conservation efforts. I would like now to invite on stage Caroline Gentin, SIDA's General Director, who will give us some opening remarks, and afterwards we will continue with the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to co-organize this event. Distinguished partners, friends in the audience, it's a Friday nearly evening here in Stockholm. In Latin America, it's midday, so whatever time it is, welcome to this seminar. The world is becoming increasingly aware of the importance of the Amazon rainforest for the global climate and biodiversity. But also, the world is becoming increasingly aware of the urgency to take action against the massive forest loss and land degradation. It is therefore an honor for us, for SIDA, to jointly organize this session on a very pressing topic. In the Amazon basin, 350 different ethnic groups are living, of which more than 60 groups remain largely isolated. A lot of people live there. The Amazon basin contains about 7 million square kilometers of tropical rainforest, representing more than half of the remaining tropical rainforest on the Earth. The Amazon rainforest is invaluable. It holds at least 10% of the world's known biodiversity and is the world's largest river basin by water volume. We also know that the Amazon rainforest is critical for stabilizing the global climate, stocking about 72 billion tons of carbon. The major threat to the Amazon rainforest is deforestation. The increasing numbers of wildfires further degrades the forest. The massive forest loss during the last decades is putting the entire area close to a tipping point, after which it would transform into a savanna. This would result in devastating loss of biodiversity and crucial ecosystem services, such as climate and water regulation, along with major emissions of carbon dioxide. The deforestation has direct negative impacts on the livelihoods of especially indigenous communities and smallholder farmers. These consequences are further aggravated by the expected changes in climate conditions. There is an urgent need of shifting investments and economic development that are driving deforestation to alternative ones that prioritize natural capital and offer climate benefits. However, investments in sustainable production are perceived as high risk and are consequently in need of alternative funding with a combination of loans, grants, and equities. It is maybe easy to think that the situation is hopeless. Here today, I hope that we can show that this is not the case. We will inspire and share good examples of what can be done. In the panel, we have representatives from indigenous groups who are active in protecting the rainforest. I would like to give one example from Bolivia. In Bolivia, it is estimated that 90% of deforestation occurs outside indigenous territories. The indigenous communities are crucial custodians of the rainforest. From SIDA, we are supporting the safeguarding role of indigenous communities, for example, promoting sustainable agroforestry with access to new markets for natural forest products. This provides higher income levels and is a crucial strategy to strengthen indigenous and other rural communities. And special focus is given to empower indigenous women who possess unique competences, knowledge, and relation to natural resources. I look forward to this interesting and inspiring conversation about what more we can do jointly, and every one of us. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Karen, and this was a very insightful and inspirational introduction that we will complement in a bit with our panelists. Let me just say a couple of words about the situation of Latin America and the Caribbean. Even before the pandemic, we had challenges. We had challenges and major financing gaps to achieve the SDGs. Then COVID-19 came and took countless lives, as well as worsened poverty and inequality in the region. And strained budgets. As a result, this altered the prioritization of certain topics, and one of them, in terms of investing, was climate change. And clearly, the Amazon is the reflection of many things we can discuss about regarding climate change. So today's discussion is therefore a critical one, because we are debating, we are looking and collectively exploring for innovative solutions to challenges and opportunities related to the Amazon region. And again, considering the challenges and the highlights that Karen gave us about the Amazon region, we see an urgent need to shift towards alternatives that prioritize natural capital. And at the IDB, we are doubling efforts to work with the Amazon, to protect the Amazon, to empower Amazonian communities and address climate challenges. All this is very visible in our Vision 2025, Reinvest in the America, our strategy that focuses on 5 areas: digitalization, regional integration, support to SMEs, gender and diversity, and of course, climate change. Our action in the Amazon covers all of these priorities, and also through the Amazon Initiative, a new platform to forge sustainable and inclusive development models based on human capital, natural wealth, and Amazonian cultural heritage, which count with the support of many partners that allow us to be more creative and more innovative. Just a couple of examples. Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium are already supporting the initiative, as well as the Green Climate Fund, through an ambitious facility that leverages resources. And we are discussing with other potential partners. So let me now invite our panelists to continue the conversation. I will welcome on stage Natalia Calderón, Executive Director, Fundación Amigos de la Naturaleza, an NGO that develops innovative paths of integral and sustainable development in the Bolivian Amazon. Harold Rincón Ipuchima, General Secretary of COICA, the Coordinator of Indigenous Organizations of the Amazon River Basin. Welcome. Keivan Macedo, Sustainability Director, Natura & Co. Certified as the world's largest B Corporation. And finally, we have remotely connected Loic Comolli, co-CEO Nest, an organization committed to supporting entrepreneurs to launch strong social businesses that reduce poverty. Welcome all. So we will have 2 rounds of questions. I will start now with the first round of questions about the challenges and innovative investments in the Amazon region. I will start with Harold. As we know, there is little time left to avoid the Amazon's tipping point. What are the biggest challenges indigenous communities face in their effort to confront this critical moment?
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Saludarlos en nombre de la Coordinadora de Organizaciones Indígenas de la Cuenca Amazónica Coica, en nombre de nuestro Coordinador General Jesús Gregorio Díaz Mirabal. Ustedes lo han dicho, lo que nosotros hemos hecho un poco es preguntarle al sector de la ciencia qué análisis tienen sobre el devenir de los bosques tropicales y en especial de los bosques de la selva húmeda tropical de la cuenca amazónica. Lo que hemos podido averiguar desde la ciencia, y voy a hablar desde ahí no para tratar aquí temas de enfoque culturales, de enfoque de nuestros sistemas de conocimiento, sino es como para alertar desde ya que los abuelos de ustedes, o sea, que los grandes científicos de ustedes, hoy se han dado cuenta que el mundo entero está conectado ecosistémicamente. Hay una relación directa entre el Sahara, ¿cierto?, entre el Océano Atlántico, los bosques amazónicos y los Andes en Sudamérica. Y de ahí uno puede triangular, digamos, otras conectividades ecosistémicas. Lo que hemos visto nosotros es que en su proceso, digamos, no de evolución, sino en el proceso natural, los bosques amazónicos o los bosques que hoy están en pie en algún momento se van a convertir en sabana. Eso ya se ha demostrado, ha pasado, hay evidencias desde la paleontología, desde la arqueología, de que el mundo ha sido así. Hoy la cuenca amazónica pasa por esa presión, ¿cierto? Más del 17% de los bosques de la cuenca amazónica ya están deforestados. La ciencia está diciendo si llegamos al 20% de deforestación, ese ecosistema no va a tener la posibilidad de autorregenerarse. Es decir, que así los seres humanos hagamos intervención antrópica para salvaguardar, no va a haber posibilidad de recuperar esos bosques. Los bosques amazónicos regulan la lluvia a través de esa conexión que hay con el Sahara, pasando por el Atlántico, lo que estamos llamando los ríos voladores. Los ríos voladores no es más que aquel mecanismo de transpiración que hacen los árboles de los bosques amazónicos consumiendo agua del subsuelo, botándolo hacia arriba, ¿cierto? Y se canalizan en las nubes, y los vientos que llegan desde el Atlántico hace, digamos, que esos ríos voladores se regulen y como le digo yo, se canalicen a través de los territorios de Sudamérica. Entonces, si nosotros analizamos esto, una de las consecuencias grandes es en las potencias suramericanas es que no van a tener posibilidad, digamos, de regular su producción de alimento. Entonces estamos diciendo es necesario, ¿cierto?, alertar a los países que no lleguemos a ese punto de inflexión, porque se va a desbaratar, digamos, esa estabilidad ecosistémica que tienen los bosques amazónicos.
Thank you very much, Harold.
Good afternoon. I would just like to greet you all from COICA. And what we have done, we as scientists, to study forests, especially in the Amazonian region, and what they found out, according to science, it's not from a cultural perspective or any other kind of perspective, but from science, they realized a while ago that the whole world is interconnected. So the savanna, the Atlantic Ocean, forest in the Amazonian region, and the Andes. And this can be extrapolated to other regions. And we've also learned that forests eventually turned into savannas. That has been studied from the paleontology point of view, archaeology. And nowadays that's happening to the Amazonian. Nowadays, 17% of the forest has already been deforested, and scientists say that if we reach 20%, there won't be any coming back. Even if people do something, it will be for naught. That's why the role that this Amazonian forest plays so important, because they regulate rain in the savanna. They are what's called flying rivers. So the forest takes the water from the air to breathe and then expose it to the clouds, and they travel through the Atlantic and help regulate water in all South America. If we take a closer look, if this changes, the effect would be that South America would no longer be able to regulate its food production. So we have to do something. So we've talked about it with other countries, because if we do nothing, then this balance in the ecosystem in South America will be lost.
Thank you, Harold. So now I will turn to Natalia. And my question is, from the perspective of Fundación Amigos de la Naturaleza, can you give us your vision of sustainable development of the Amazon and tell us a little more about how an NGO addresses the main challenges and opportunities to promote an inclusive bioeconomy in the region? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us to share the experiences of Fundación Amigos de la Naturaleza in Bolivia. When you think about Bolivia, you mainly think about highlands, but 65% of Bolivia is Amazonia. So I will talk about a little bit about our experiences in the Amazon region. Fundación Amigos de la Naturaleza is a non-profit civil society organization with more than 32 years of experience working, implementing actions for biodiversity conservation and sustainable development in Bolivia. We believe that we should recognize that the conservation of nature is the fundamental basis for achieving sustainable development. In our theory of change, the conservation of nature and its ecosystem services requires a context where effective and inclusive management of biodiversity and the conservation and management of natural resources enable the conservation, the protection, and also the restoration of key ecosystems in Bolivia. This requires a virtuous combination with sustainable and resilient production systems as the basis for local livelihoods in productive landscapes. We believe that bioeconomy is one of the most important frontiers of scientific and technological innovation. The Amazon has no doubt a significant bioeconomic potential. It's essential to pursue a transition to an alternative economic model that no longer relies on deforestation and the expansion of the agricultural frontiers in our countries. Instead, adding value and technological value to sustainable production and good practices. We are working in Bolivia, building capacities and empowering local communities and indigenous communities, local producers, practitioners, local businesses, researchers, and also local governmental authorities in bioeconomy initiatives in Bolivia, showing the potential of natural resources in sustainable management and biodiversity conservation in Bolivia. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. And now I will ask a question to Loic. So Loic, considering some of the points just outlined by the previous speakers, what challenges do you see in scaling up sustainable and inclusive financing in the Amazon region?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me as part of this panel. And as you mentioned in the introduction, NEST is a social investment organization financing small businesses that advance social and environmental goals in Latin America and other emerging economies. And we manage a program specifically targeting bioeconomy businesses in the Amazon region of Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador. the program currently accelerates and finances about 45 small businesses that do bioeconomy and employing 6,000 mostly smallholder farmers in different sectors such as nuts and seeds, fisheries, forest products, coffee, and cacao. Now, what we see as a social investor is we see four main challenges to deploying more capital into the Amazon basin, especially around impact investment and small business development. The first challenge is around markets. Many value chains that depend on the bioeconomy are fairly new, and they are victims of sort of high demand and pricing volatility. For example, we finance a Sacha Inchi business in Peru. Sacha Inchi is a nut, a seed native to the Amazon, and it has very high social and environmental benefits. But the demand fluctuations for the product in international markets is very high. So when we did due diligence on that particular company, it really demonstrated just sort of revenues that were up and down and up and down. And that makes it very, very difficult for a social investor to understand the track record. As part of the market challenge, also, many of the bioeconomy businesses in the Amazon basin depend mostly on 1 to 2 clients for the majority of their sales. So their commercial partnership capacity is quite low, and they are not very well integrated with domestic, regional, or even international markets. And that's because of distance, and that makes those businesses quite risky because they're very dependent on 1 or 2 clients. The second challenge is around financing the bioeconomy. So working capital is a very, very big need. We see a lot of cooperatives and associations that actually have clients, but they're not able to fulfill demand because they do not have sufficient working capital to be able to work with their smallholder farmers. So an example of that, we finance a couple of Brazil nut associations, and they have more demand from clients in the US that they can fulfill. And the reason for that is they simply do not have sufficient working capital to secure Brazil nuts from their associates and members during the high season. And so it limits the growth of the company. It limits also the environmental benefits that could come from that growth. The third challenge is around geography and just logistics. Bioeconomy businesses are obviously most of the time located in very remote areas of the Amazon, far from clients and urban markets. And it can take them several days to bring their products to their clients. And it's difficult in this environment for associations and cooperatives, for example, to be able to build inventory of their products because of spoilage, because it takes so much time to transport, or they face very high transportation costs to sell their products. Then the fourth and the last challenge we see as social investor is actually around supply. And this is a little bit counterintuitive, because when we think of the Amazon, we think of a region that has an abundance of raw materials, which is true in some cases, but it's actually quite challenging for businesses in the Amazon to develop their supply chains. It takes a long time to train communities. If you need to have organic certification, that's costly. Some of the products require environmental management plans. And so supply is actually quite difficult to start up and also to ramp up when demand increases. So those are the four main challenges we see in deploying capital into grassroots communities.
Thank you very much, Loic. Very interesting and clear your answer. Now I will turn to Kevin. And as a private sector leader, could you explain a little more about your biggest challenges in sustainable investment in the region and what is needed to help unlock the full potential of private sector?
Okay. So first of all, thanks SIDA and IDB for the invitation. I think that I'm going to shift a little bit about the answer that I'm going to give to your question, just try to connect with some of the points that Locke raised a little bit, because I think that we prove with the business model that we created 20 years ago that it is possible to develop a business in the region. But I agree with him that you need to change a little bit the way that you do business in the region. So for the last 20 years, Natura has been transforming social and environmental challenges in business opportunity, mainly introducing biodiversity ingredients in their products, combining traditional knowledge with the local and indigenous communities. So we are inspired by their traditional knowledge to develop these products that we call Ecos brands that we have inside our portfolio. But it's true that it's very difficult to do this process because whenever you want to establish this value chain, you need to create relations with the local communities, to establish the trust with them and to guarantee that they are going to extract those ingredients and those seeds and fruits in a sustainable way. And of course, sometimes you need to make the primary processing in the regions. Otherwise, you do not have raw ingredients with quality whenever reach to your manufacturing facilities. And also, the manufacturing facilities should be located in the regions. Otherwise, it's not interesting that you extract the ingredients from the regions and then you're going to add value in another region. So that is the reason 2011 we decided to create a manufacturing facility in the north part of Brazil, because we have the majority of the communities in the surrounds of the factory. So we are trying to reduce a little bit the distance that we have to try to deliver those ingredients in our manufacturing facilities. Also, we need to create a special department that is going to be in connection and in direct relations with those communities. It's not a matter that you have a traditional vendor that you just pick up the phone and you order a new amount that is going to be delivered the next day or in the next week. So sometimes, as Loic was explaining, we have to respect the cycles of nature. Some of the ingredients that we are harvesting or we are extracting, it will last probably 2 years, 1 year, even 3 years. So, and also, depend on the situation, especially with the effects of climate change, we suffer from 1 year to the other one. So we have faced some recently years that it will decrease the Brazilian nut production in 70%. So how we can produce any cosmetic products using Brazilian nuts if you do not have Brazilian nut available? Which means that we need to invest to expand a little bit of the sourcing areas. And to do this is not as simple. It will demand months so we can establish a sustainable sourcing from the region. But I think that addressing the main question that you raised to me is that there are some technicians and some methodologies to put this in place. But the point is that we have a lack of a financial framework. And of course, we do not have funding mechanisms to try to implement this. And whenever we are talking about Latin America, this will make a huge difference. Second point is that there is no collaborations among companies that are operating in the regions, which means that we need to scale up good practice. So whenever we have that, we need to share, so we need to scale up. And also, I think that we are in a moment that the majority of the companies do not realize yet the dependence that they have on nature. So whenever we accelerate a common framework to measure our nature dependence, recognize the economic value and also the cultural value, I think that we are going to have the conscience to try to put in place a different business model that can introduce the Amazon regions in our value chain.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And now back to Karen. I would like to hear from you from the perspective of a donor country. Where do you see the most significant challenges again in the development of inclusive investment in the Amazon?
I think that we are more or less, I think, circulating around the same challenges, and I would take it from our point of view as a Swedish donor and aid agency. The first one is knowledge. The second one, enabling environment. The third one, finance. Knowledge is to be a bit more aware, all of us, and all of us being producers, consumers, investors, other actors, all of us better aware of what is sustainable and what is our part in creating the sustainability. And also what is unsustainable and how to avoid unsustainable activities in different ways. This can, to achieve this knowledge, to achieve a greater level of knowledge, we need to do mapping and tracing of different kinds. There are different initiatives. We support one, which is led by the Stockholm Environment Institute. It's called the TRACE Initiative, and it has developed a powerful online platform mapping commodity supply impacts on the Amazon. That is one initiative. I'm sure there are others, but knowledge is one part of it. Enabling environment would be simple, it sounds like, but we all, having taken part in these 2 days, know it's difficult. Enabling environment includes phasing out negative subsidies and introducing incentives of different kinds. Incentives for investments in nature and investments in sustainable production. The third part is financing, and several of the panelists have touched upon it before. We have to jointly find ways of financing indigenous peoples' companies or communities in different ways. As SIDA, we can work with, of course, the grant element, but mainly with the guarantee instrument to try to support investments by indigenous communities. And here we are very willing to find ways of working together with you in finding different models. So those would be the three sort of challenges and from our perspective that I would like to point out.
Thank you very much. I think, as was mentioned, we went around very clearly challenges that are common from different perspectives. And now, before going on to the second set of questions, we have a video to watch together. We will see Vilma Mendoza Miro, President of the National Confederation of Indigenous Women in Bolivia, who will share our views with us.
Los principales desafíos para nosotros específicamente son, primero que nada, insertar los planes de vida que se tienen dentro de los territorios hacia las políticas públicas, ¿no? Segundo es, pues, garantizar los recursos económicos para poder hacer esa buena gestión dentro de los territorios, ¿no? Pues tercero es, hoy en día, por ejemplo, se tienen políticas públicas muy extractivas, entonces lo que se quiere es específicamente en el desarrollo de la agricultura que hacen ya los pueblos indígenas, se necesita el cumplimiento de la cadena productiva, por ejemplo, dentro del agro, ¿no? Bajo su propia prácticas tradicionales y empleando lo que es la educación, por ejemplo, ancestral, el cultivo diversificado, que para nosotros eso es sostenible, ¿no? Son parcelas diversificadas donde están los cacaos, los cítricos, los bananos, ¿no? Los plátanos. Entonces, creemos que ese tipo de desarrollo agrícola que llevamos adelante es muy importante para conservar y para seguir teniendo esa diversidad de variedades, de especies de plantas, ¿no? Para nosotros es la tierra que tiene que prestar la función social, ¿no? Eso tiene que ver con conservar, proteger, cuidarlo, ¿no? A todo nuestro entorno, con el simple hecho de entender que la tierra no se va a expandir, ¿no? Que esa casa que nos dieron nuestros antepasados es para cuidarle, ¿no? Que hay que cuidar esos cimientos porque si no lo cuidamos vamos a tener que perder, ¿no? Ese bosque, esa biodiversidad, vamos a tener que perder, por ejemplo, nuestras aguas, ¿no? Entonces, necesitamos hacer conciencia ante la sociedad, ante las autoridades, para poder seguir teniendo estas aguas dulces, ¿no? Para seguir teniendo estas estaciones que tenemos para poder contrarrestar, por ejemplo, el cambio climático que llega hoy en día tan bruscamente. Las mujeres hoy en día se ve cada vez más visible, ¿no? Sobre la protección de los territorios, ¿no? De la madre tierra, la madre naturaleza, porque se identifica con ella, ¿no? Son promovedoras, protectoras de la vida. Entonces, con ella, pues, somos también las protectoras de los saberes, ¿no? Guardamos muchos conocimientos, a la vez lo transmitimos valores, principios, ¿no?
We will now listen to the translation of this video, I believe. It was subtitled. Oh, apologies. I was not reading, and I was just listening. So we will. This video was a perfect introduction to our second block of questions, because now we will go on to discussing more the role of indigenous communities as stewards for the forest. So I will start now with Keivan, and again, thinking of your organization and the opportunities for inclusive and sustainable solutions that combine conservation and especially community inclusion. What advice would you give to other private sector actors?
So I think that for the last 2 decades, we have given these transformation about the reality that we face in the region, mainly in the Amazon rainforest. So normally today we are talking about a lot about bioeconomy, and we prefer to call that we are developing the economy of the standing forest. So we are proving to the local communities that they can receive more income with the standing forest instead of just chopping down the trees. And how we are doing that? I think that it's very important to understand that currently you need to try to add more income to the baskets of the communities, because by the end, deforestation is knocking in their doors, it's knocking in our doors. So what we did is that, and we have this very iconic case that is a local species that called ukuba, that we can offer to the communities just to collect half of the seeds, 3 times more of the incomes that they are receiving whenever they are chopping down the trees to sell to make and to produce broomsticks. So one of the things is that how we can try to apply principles of a fair trade whenever you establish the value of the raw ingredients that you are purchasing to the local communities. Second is that the majority of the ingredients that we are purchasing, we are paying access and benefit sharing because of generic heritage or even because of traditional knowledge when we are applying in development of our products. But I think that also we have an important mechanism that we need to recognize that in some of the cases we are preserve and conserve, making the conservations of those forests, and we might generate carbon credits with in this value chain, which means that we can also add another income. And one of the mechanisms that we developed together with Mapa Biomes is this portal that we call Plena Mata, that the idea is that how we can try to measure the deforestation rates that we have in the regions. But also, in the other hand, what is the efforts of restorations and reforestations that we are seeing in the region. So by the end, we can use technology in our favor, not only to make the measurements about what is happening outside of our communities, but also the positive impact that we are generating in our communities.
Thank you very much, Keivan. And now I will go back to Harold. How do you foresee the role of the new generations of indigenous people in the efforts to conserve the Amazonian ecosystem? Do you consider their participation in tech projects and the bioeconomy vital to these efforts? As before, Harold will answer in Spanish and you will hear the translation when he finishes.
Sí, una participación de manera eficiente en el que los pueblos indígenas desde el principio, la construcción de iniciativas no solo de bioeconomías, de tecnologías, sino también en iniciativas legislativas, ¿cierto? Para normativizar, digamos, y ser más fuerte las cuestiones ambientales en los países, eso se requiere. Hicimos participación efectiva desde el principio de la construcción misma, para poner una coma, un punto, un párrafo, desde ahí. Es necesario. La participación de los jóvenes igualmente se requiere, ya es el cliché que es el futuro de la humanidad. Pero yo también quería resaltar aquí, frente a lo que acaba de decir el compañero, nosotros desde la COICA venimos trabajando con cierto tipo de empresas a nivel global que están interesadas en revisar el tema del mercado del carbono. Estamos trabajando precisamente para emitir, para sacar una estandarización que permite sacar bonos de carbono de la más alta calidad que respete, por un lado, los derechos fundamentales de los pueblos indígenas, sus territorios, pero que a la vez no sea permisivo con aquellas empresas que lo único que buscan es borrar sus huellas de carbono, sino, digamos, generar esa conciencia de protección sobre el medio ambiente. Nosotros no podemos generar buen vivir, digámoslo así, ¿cierto?, a través de la minería, a través de la mercantilización, digamos, de los productos que tenemos en los bosques. De hecho, lo podemos hacer, pero culturalmente hay un impedimento para nosotros porque nosotros no hacemos eso. Tenemos hoy una oportunidad y es regular el mercado de carbono, regular los mecanismos de pagos por servicios ambientales, que es la ruta de acción climática que tiene la COICA, el REG indígena amazónico, que es la contrapropuesta que tenemos nosotros desde la COICA al REG convencional que tiene Naciones Unidas. Nosotros creemos que ahí, ¿cierto?, trabajando con las empresas, con los gobiernos y con los pueblos indígenas podemos ayudar, digamos, a garantizar las NDC de 2015 de Acuerdo de París. Yo quería un poco como referirme a eso porque sí me parece importante que es necesario resolver el tema de financiación.
Yes, so for an efficient participation, indigenous people should be taken into account from the start. They should be included not only from an economic point of view, but also in the politics. We should empower them and have them there when writing every single comma in a document, also young people. But there's another topic I would like to bring up. In COICA, we've been working with different organizations from all around the world who want to change how they've been going with carbon. So they want to erase their carbon print. And they also want to obtain high-quality carbon while still respecting the land. We have been helping these enterprises erase their carbon print. Mining, mercantilization wouldn't be enough. We need to regulate carbon markets and other markets. In COICA, we've been collaborating with enterprises, governments, and indigenous communities to fulfill Paris Treaty and other treaties. And we think that that is also important from the financing point of view.
Thank you, Harold. And now back to Karen. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has recently launched an initiative encouraging governments to prioritize investment in nature as part of the post-pandemic recovery strategies. Again, as the previous question I asked you, how do you see the role of donor countries from this perspective?
I think that it's an interesting, IUCN is doing an interesting work and it's important. And we have to balance two things at the same time now. We're in a hurry. The post-pandemic really, as you described in the beginning, throw Latin America back and the Amazon back in poverty. So in that sense, we're in a hurry to really meet the needs of people.
Yeah.
But we cannot lose track of what is ahead of us, and that is to save the Amazonas and to save biodiversity in the region. So for us as a donor, we can keep track or keep our eyes on the horizon, so to say, whilst dealing with today's problems, and really searching for the intervention that puts the two things in the center at the same time. We can do this by working with, as I said before, the grant element, but also searching with using the guarantee instrument together with financial institutions like the IDB and others. And always look for what is sometimes called green financing. I think it's a very strange word to put it, but it's a financing for nature-based solutions. Let's put it that way. And in this, we always have to look for the target groups. When we, or let's put it this way, a funder like SIDA or a donor like SIDA, of course we have a substantial budget, but it's not endless, meaning that we have to prioritize also target groups. And that would in this case mean prioritizing indigenous peoples and other smallholder farmers in the Amazon region. And work on for giving them the possibility to combine income generation and sustainable management of the Amazon biome. That is possible, and we can do it by doing the two things at the same time. But we are in a hurry for the sake of the forest, but also for the sake of poverty.
Yes. Thank you very much, Karin. And now I would like to go back to Loic, and given the challenges outlined by our panelists, how can we ensure that financing solutions go to the local communities that conserve and restore the rainforest?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my answer is going to basically be given from the perspective of a social investor financing small businesses in the Amazon. So there are four. The first one is patient capital. And we always talk about how entrepreneurs need to adapt and grow more quickly and become investment ready. And some of that is true, but social investors also need to adapt. We really need to look at what are the needs on the ground of local and grassroots entrepreneurs. And what entrepreneurs tell us in the Amazon is they need long-term capital to invest in their organizational development, to build their long-term capacity so that they can then access more sustainable sources of financing. A lot of the financing going into Amazon businesses right now is the short-term working capital or trade financing. And that's great, but it doesn't build the long-term capacity of a small business. The second one is investment readiness programs. And currently, I would say there are very few investment-ready bioeconomy businesses. I think there's kind of a tendency of social investors pursuing the same companies, and we need to have a broader pipeline. We have to have a bigger cohort of businesses that are ready for social financing. And I would actually go as far as to say that capital may not be the scarcity right now for the bioeconomy. I would say kind of good quality entrepreneurs are harder to come by. And so what do we need to do? we need to invest in very good acceleration and incubation programs that are locally driven, adapted to the needs of Amazon-based entrepreneurs, with very strong mentoring programs and also grants to help these businesses to grow to a place where they can start raising money. So for example, actually Nest, we have an indigenous incubator program that is designed specifically to support. We have about 30 indigenous businesses currently in that program. And it combines small grants with training and basic business skills. And actually, we're working on that with COICA, and it has some great potential. The third one is we need to integrate indigenous people and local communities in some of the decisions that are made about acceleration programs, about allocation of capital. So they are part of the design of these mechanisms from the very beginning, as was said earlier by our friend at COICA. And to ensure that they can participate and sort of tell us and give us a seal of approval that the resources are going to the right places. And the last one, we see a gap in terms of the local ecosystem to support entrepreneurs in the Amazon. We need more and better qualified service providers locally in the region who can support entrepreneurs with their financial and legal needs as they grow, and so they can professionalize. So one barrier that we see at Nest time and again is the lack of financial skills among Amazon-based businesses, and both internally in those businesses, but there are also very few qualified external financial advisors. And so that's an area, obviously, that would be worth investing into so that social investors are more confident in unlocking the potential that exists.
Thank you, Loic, for this insightful analysis of challenges and financing, possible financing solutions. And now I will go to Natalia for our last question of this second part. And tell us, Natalia, how is FAN helping articulate the efforts between the different sectors and local communities so that the region's development is both inclusive and sustainable?
We have different strategies. Today we've heard about coordination and also about knowledge. We are Fundación Amigos de la Naturaleza is part of the Amazonian network of georeferenced socio-environmental information called RISE in Spanish. It's a network of civil society organizations of 6 of the Amazonian countries that are concerned about the socio-environmental development of the Amazonia. And we work producing data, high quality data, and making visible the role of indigenous territories and protected areas. As was mentioned in the beginning of the session, almost 47% of the Amazonia is covered by indigenous territories and protected areas. These areas are important to talk about sustainable development. And 87%, 88% of the deforestation is occurring outside these both important territories, indigenous territories and protected areas. So the role is crucial. We're working with alliances to show the data about pressure and threats on the Amazonia in this network, and we are working in alliance with COICA also to raise their voices and to include their, making visible its role in the conservation of the Amazonia, and strengthening actions for the demarcation and consolidation of indigenous territory. And when we talk about consolidation, it's not only the declaration of an area, but also giving the mechanisms, local governance, strengthening, empowering local communities. So we need to include their voices in the legislation, in the definition of local governance and environmental management, and the policies that are occurring. This is essential for building sustainable development in our countries.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Thank you to all the panelists. We will close the session with a video, a short message by two young indigenous Amazonian representatives. But before that, I would like to thank you all, Harold, Keivan, Karin, Natalia, and Loic, for this very comprehensive and holistic perspective we got on the subject we were discussing. And I would like to point out 4 takeaways. And here I am using Loic's 4 points that he gave us in each of his answers. So the first one, which I really liked from each of your answers, was awareness of the challenges, clarity on the theory of change that we need to follow, as well as how we measure things and track them. So that was fantastic, I think, in your answers. The second point would be innovative business models that need to adapt to local needs, and all that comes with financing and all we've heard from our speakers. The third point, clearly partnerships. You gave lots of examples. I will not go over them again. And finally, and most importantly, the central role of indigenous communities. So thank you very much again for joining us. And now we can hear Diana and Hector from the Colombian Amazon. Thank you again.
Mi nombre es Héctor Fabio Yucuna, soy indígena Yucuna del departamento del Amazonas, el actual coordinador de juventud en la Amazonía colombiana. Para nosotros los pueblos indígenas es muy importante la transmisión del conocimiento ancestral y tradicional que se ha adquirido originariamente por nuestros abuelos y abuelas durante todo ese tiempo. Entonces, la juventud actualmente juega un papel muy importante. Uno, porque es quien percibe y concibe todos esos conocimientos tradicionales a través del mambeadero, a través de las visitas a las chagras, a través del conocimiento y uso de los bosques, a través del cuidado y mantenimiento de nuestros ríos. Entonces, la juventud ha jugado y juega un papel muy importante milenariamente. Justamente con ello preservamos los ríos, mantenemos viva la madre naturaleza y con ello también la vida para las nuevas generaciones y la pervivencia como originarios en esta planeta Tierra.
En el marco del siglo XXI, las organizaciones indígenas, en este caso la Organización Nacional de Pueblos Indígenas de la Amazonía Colombiana, OPIAC, se suma al reto de cómo incluir la tecnología en el marco de la protección y la conservación de los ecosistemas, en este caso el bioma amazónico. Es por eso que desde ahí sale el Fondo INDI, una estrategia de tokenización de los territorios hoy por hoy conservados y protegidos de los pueblos indígenas, en este caso los resguardos que tienen títulos de propiedad colectiva. En ese marco de cosas, la tecnología justamente acerca a las comunidades al conocimiento y al reconocimiento de las potencialidades con las que cuentan y, por supuesto, suma esfuerzos para que otros individuos, actores en el marco global puedan conocer las realidades y las acciones que realizan los pueblos indígenas para conservar y proteger sus propios territorios.
Esta tarea no es solo de nosotros los pueblos indígenas, sino de toda una sociedad. Es una tarea, una responsabilidad que por medio de los medios tecnológicos cabe esta ventana y esta brecha hacia un mundo occidental, hacia otros continentes, justamente porque la responsabilidad de cuidar el medio ambiente y el planeta Tierra no solo de los pueblos indígenas, sino de todos. Y por medio de imágenes, por medio de todo un sistema tecnológico podemos visibilizar, 1, la cultura, 2, la vida que hay y lo que ofrecen los pueblos indígenas, y 3, con ellos, las metodologías y estrategias propias para el cuidado y del medio ambiente. Entonces, con ello, hacemos parte de que todos nos hagamos responsables y cuidemos todo eso que se nos ha dado y se nos ha entregado desde el Padre Creador.
Finalmente llamamos al mundo entero a que se una a esta estrategia de inclusión digital, sobre todo reconociendo la multidisciplinaridad y justamente toda la riqueza cultural, espiritual, material, inmaterial que tienen los territorios a nivel global. Los pueblos indígenas son sujetos activos que se piensan también cómo resolver y cómo integrarse a la sociedad del conocimiento, a una era digital que cada vez, si bien nos da la posibilidad de conocer, también termina fracturando algunos procesos. La invitación es a unirse, a que los pueblos indígenas también y todos los actores hagan parte de estrategias como el Fondo INDI y como otros, ¿no? De bajar la tecnología, ir cerrando también las brechas digitales que tenemos con nuestras comunidades y, por supuesto, el desarrollo territorial en cada uno de nuestros departamentos.
Thank you very much.